Hi there, this is Photography of Director podcast, and my name is Vitaly Bokser. I'm a cinematographer and I work on all sorts of different projects, and I've decided to do a podcast about other filmmakers. Today we have Carlos Almonte, an editor and a director. This will be a two-parter since Carlos has such a long filmmaking history. We actually both started out as kids in Brooklyn making films and playing music, and I've known Carlos for a very long time at this point. The first part we'll cover is the part which is damn fascinating. He and his friends used to make action films back in the day. I'm talking about when he was like 14 years old. He was strapping fireworks to his body for practical scuba effects and running around Brooklyn with painted plastic semi-automatics. And the cops got involved at least once that I know of. He already shot multiple features, like I said, by the age of 14, and then tried to sell them on the back of Fangoria type magazines. Like, who else did that at 14? I'm also going to start this podcast off with one of his music videos that I shot with him, so you get a taste for his work. And don't forget, you can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes with a video or audio only feed. Just look up Photography of Director. And all the links to the films we chat about can be found on photographyofdirector.com. So without further ado, here is episode 007 with Carlos, and here is My Sweet Radio by Julian James.
So I wrote you that letter, talking you and I forever, but hearing a different tune. I'm over you now for good. No more me and you. I got my new song. I bring it on home. My radio brings it on home. Woo! Something the DJ is playing that sounds so sweet. Those were the days I swept you off your feet. But my radio, has always been good to me. Something the DJ is playing that sounds so sweet. Those were the days I swept you off your feet. But my radio has always been good to me.
So everybody, this is Photography of Director, and this is podcast 007, and Carlos Almonte, 007. Carlos Almonte is joining us. He's an editor, a director, a producer. I don't know, you don't write though, right?
I've written, yeah. I mean, that's actually what I went to school for, believe it or not.
He's written poems, apparently, folks.
And some songs.
So tell us a little bit about you, and I know you do all those things, but tell us a little bit about you and how you got started before we go into what you're doing now.
How I got started?
Well, yeah, the beginning when you were just a seaman.
Wee lad. Going back. I guess I'd have to say that it started probably in junior high school. I'd say it all started in junior high school. Really, I remember being in band in a band class. I was in a band. I was playing the trumpet, and there was a guy like 2 seats next to me who was playing the trombone, and he just looked over at me one day randomly and was like, "Hey, do you want to come by after school? I got a video camera. Why don't we go and make a movie?" And I'm like, "Make a movie? What are you talking about?" He's like, "Yeah, it's a lot of fun." So I went over to his house and we filmed for probably like 2 or 3 hours. I mean, we just shot, and that summer was, I think it was the summer when like Terminator 2 came out, or Terminator was really big, and so we just basically did like the biggest ripoff of Terminator ever. There's like tinfoil everywhere, trying to be like the T-1000, all this stuff, and we must have shot for like 2 or 3 hours, and we're all excited to see this like huge project that we did. We played it back, and I think it was like 2 minutes. So I was like, really? It took us all that time to do like 2 minutes, And
was this Vico, by the way?
No, this was my friend Tully.
Okay, this is somebody else. I met him as well.
Say again?
I met him as well. Once.
Oh yeah, you met Tully. That's right. Yeah, you met Tully. So Tully, I would say Tully Wong is the guy that like introduced me to this as a possible career path. As a kid, 12, 13 years old, maybe even as young as 11, and we started making these movies. And then I would bring my friends over after school, and they got bigger and bigger. The productions got bigger and bigger, and we started this like series of little shorts called Bounty Hunter. And we started doing these little films, and they were like 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and eventually we got more into it, and we got more and more ambitious, and we decided to try for the third film to do a feature. We tried to do a feature at like 12, 13 years old. The thing was, back in the day, you couldn't edit anything. So we just could not afford the editing equipment, and like even using two VCRs wouldn't work. So we would have to do everything in camera. So if we wanted like a match cut, even on an action scene, we had to learn like how long after you hit record does it actually record, and you get used to this timing. And we actually did a feature film this way. And what's interesting too is, I mean, even back then we had the foresight where we were like, okay, so we wanted the final scene to take place around the Thanksgiving parade. So we literally had to shoot everything in order, preparing up to the exact shot that we needed at the Thanksgiving parade, so that we could film it and continue the movie.
You didn't master the VCR to VCR technique?
We tried, man, but it's hard. Actually, it was really hard. I mean, those VCRs back then had like a 7-second delay.
Yeah, it was annoying. You would hit record, it would start later. You would hit stop, it would stop later. Oh.
Exactly. And so by the time you were done, it was just easier to actually just cut it in camera. Like just literally start and stop with every single shot that you needed.
It's kind of fucked up now. Kids are just using their iPads for the same thing.
They're literally sitting there on their phones editing this thing,
right.
Between texting and like checking emails.
It used to take me 3 days to set up VCRs to work fucking right.
Cables, I mean, your RCA cables, you remember all this stuff?
Yeah, 320 by 240, baby.
And and I think that's when like the editing became this like mystique to us, like at 12, 13 years old. Editing became this thing that like only the absolute like elite could do. There was no way we just did not have access to this. Even with the VCRs, we just couldn't. And so we had to think in terms of, how do we tell this story? How do we produce this thing so that we can actually stick to a schedule and get the shots that we need? And so I'd say it started around then, and it just continued. I mean, after a while, it was like all that we did. That was our lives. We put all of our money into it. We started actually scripting these things. We started getting actors. We started...
Wait, did you actually hire like SAG actors for this, or just like Craigslist actors?
We got our, we would get our friends.
Actually, there was no Craigslist. What am I talking about? There's no internet.
There's literally a guy named Craig.
Craig in the corner. That's what we're talking about.
Right.
So how did you cast? At 12, how old are you? 14 years old at this point? What, 13, 14?
The same way that Tully would recruit us. We would ask our friends, hey, you were looking for this, or like my sister's boyfriends, or people that you knew. You would ask them to make the commitment. You'd write a part. You'd have them read it. I'd get my girlfriend at the time, or a friend, and you just get your friends together, and this became our thing. This is like what we did. We were actually like known in the neighborhood for like being those kids always running around with cameras, dressed in like army fatigues and like fake guns and like
and this is kind of cool because in Brooklyn you can run around with fake guns and nobody fucking stops you, right?
Oh, no, back in the day you could. I mean, and we would actually we would buy the big, like the realistic looking machine guns, and we'd open them up and take out all the like the water gun guts, and we'd put batteries in them. We'd take like old batteries, so they were really heavy, and they would make all this rattling noise when you moved them around. And we would like running around the streets of Brooklyn with like, an AK-47 strapped to our backs, like no one cared.
You could, today you get shot, probably.
Yeah, today we would be a story on the news.
Yeah, you would. I think I just read a news article a couple of weeks ago about that. Some guys were filming, and they didn't tell, I don't know, they didn't tell somebody, but basically some patrons saw them and called the police. The police surrounded them. It was a whole insane mess. So
wow. We actually had a funny story like that where we were trying to shoot a scene. Again, ripping off of Terminator, the scene where like John Connor's being chased. We tried to shoot a scene where one of like our version of John Connor like runs into a crowded train station, and like the two like Terminator type guys chase them. And so we thought at that young age that it'd be a great idea to just like run into the train station, at like rush hour, and like just shoot the scene to get the reactions being all natural.
Right.
And the cops did show up.
They did? Okay, so what did they say to you?
So, like 2 minutes, we shot the first half of the scene, and we were trying to cover it from like another angle, and like suddenly like the train platform was empty. And then like the next train pulled in, and there was no one on the train, and a bunch of cops got off the train.
Nice.
Yeah,
and what they say? What happened?
We're like, we're just a bunch of dumb kids. And thankfully they let us get it. They let us go.
Yeah, that's because you stayed for a fucking take too. That's because you're trying to get coverage here with fucking
reverse.
You need a reverse. I ain't leaving this train station.
That was at a certain point where we realized that doing these things in camera was impractical. We realized that at some point we needed to edit these things, and we started to think more like directors, where we're going to cover it from this angle, and also for actors, like if you want them to run through a performance and get into it. And we just knew from our own experience that that's the way that you just got to do these things. And so we started to shoot them, thinking that eventually we'd either get the money for gear, or we'd eventually have access to some equipment. What we would do is we would like have garage sales and like sell all of our stuff to buy gear. And there was actually a classified section in the back of Fangoria magazine, and there was a sister magazine, a sister publication that was a sci-fi one, and for like $10 you could get a little ad. And so we would make these little movies, we'd edit them together on VHS, and we would put ads up in Fangoria magazine or whatever that sci-fi one was. And we would try to sell the movies, thinking we were going to make enough money to buy editing gear and be able to cut these things. I think we made enough money for like a pizza.
Really? No, like nobody, like what, 10 people bought it,
Yeah, I mean, look, there was no YouTube. I mean, nowadays, a 15-year-old kid can make a movie and everyone in the world could see it. We just did not have access to that. And so that's what we did. I mean, we did that all the way, I would say, first, second year of junior high school, all the way through high school. Like, that's just what we did. That's what we did on weekends, at nights. We were doing, multiple projects at a time.
How many actual, so this is crazy because you're like 14 years old approximately, and you're actually shooting whole features with casts, with scripts, right? I think I saw one. I know you for a long time in case people don't realize this, but I've seen some of these scripts and I was like, I ain't reading this at 14. I was like, I'm not.
Like that.
It's a thick script, right? It's like you guys wrote like 160 page scripts.
Yeah.
About what? About get that fucking gun out of there.
That's what we would do when we hung out. We would just, everything was about movies and TV shows. We would watch a lot of X-Files and a lot of sci-fi movies and a lot of horror movies, and so we just wanted to do something that looked as cool as the stuff that was entertaining us.
Right.
And that's just how we thought. So we were just always shooting. I would say that there's more video of me as a kid than there are photos. I mean, there's hours and hours. And actually, I still have a lot of those old tapes, like bags and bags and bags of just tapes. And I know that there was a couple of movies, especially when we started.
Just give me one of those to digitize. We'll put it on the website, and we'll show the first movie.
That is on my list. That is on my list. Just sit there one day, just digitize it all, and actually cut it together. Even just for posterity, just to see, where we were as kids, and like actually see that.
Right. That'll never happen.
I mean, no, not with the hours I'm working these days, but it's like at some point, I'm definitely going to do that. I'm going to digitize all that stuff, even just to have, because the tapes are, they're going to go bad at some point, and they're just not going to be viewable. So even just to store them, but at a certain point, I mean, it's not going to take that long to cut. It's not like we shot a million angles. We did the best we could, and we were like 14,
right. So how many? It was a 2-hour movie, but you shot a 2-hour movie, an hour and a half movie. How long was this movie?
I mean, that one, hour and 45 minutes. I'd say.
And how long? How many of these did you shoot? How many of these full feature movies did you shoot?
I would say, off the top of my head, I think we did at least 3.
3 fucking movies.
But mind you, they were shot and they were never cut. I mean, a lot of these we would just shoot these for months and months and months. And if we didn't finish all of it, like some of them were like 90% done. There was a couple of scenes that we were missing, and then we'd switch and do another project, or we'd do something small, like a short little film, just so that we could have something that we can have the sense of accomplishment instead of just keep chipping away at something.
I mean, isn't it nice to be that young, just to create for the sake of creating and not caring really what the fuck happens with this
God,
thing?
Yeah. I mean, I look back at that now, and look, there are things that you miss out on being a kid, like not running around and doing some of the things that little kids do. But I look back at that now, and I'm glad that we did that, man. I'm really glad that we took the time and we did all that. We were experimenting in like this little protected bubble. We were actually just getting to, we didn't realize it at the time, but we were exercising a muscle that, you don't really, most people might not get to do that until they're much older. You know, you might not get to do that till you're older. And I think we just learned a lot about how to work with people, how to what do you really need to tell a story, like the core nugget of what a story is,
and how to save money,
all those things. Oh yeah, I mean, how to save money. I remember I had a job. I was working as a cashier or something somewhere, and I had to basically quit my job because we wanted to like make this movie. So I like worked my ass off, like just to make as much money as I could. And on that last day, I got that paycheck and like literally went to the store and like spent it all on clothes and props, and that's just our entire life was just making movies, man. And we ended up getting into high school and college before we ever got to like see any of that stuff through. But those years, I mean, it was really important during those formative years to just have that. And it was also a really interesting way to like bond with your friends because we got to play different characters. You know, like I remember.
That's the one thing. You were actors in these movies too. That's the one thing you didn't mention.
Actors, we were producing it. We would do everything involved with the movie. Whatever needed to get done, we would do it. I mean, we would like scrounge up money, get the $10 for a wheelchair, and like take it outside and use that as a shot. Or a shopping cart suddenly became a dolly.
I remember you telling me some crazy story, but you guys strapped yourself because you were doing violent movies like Terminator 2, basically. So you would strap yourself with M80s and whatever firecrackers all over your body.
M80s will take a chunk out of you, but no. Back when fireworks were legal, you know those little blackjacks. They came in a pack, and you'd like light them up, and they would pop. But we realized, like, they don't, individually, they don't actually have a lot of punch.
Right, so but 100 of them.
Use these, with 100 of them, But I mean, what we would do is we would use those as squibs, because again, remind you, we were doing these things in camera. So we would make like bags of blood, and we would tape these things to them, and you'd have a guy come.
It's all practical.
And light it, and boom. And then eventually, when we got older, we got a little more bold, and we were like putting packs of these firecrackers on, and they look great. I mean, when someone's doing a machine gun and you're seeing these things go up, it looks amazing. It looks amazing.
Right. And nobody got hurt during this fucking formative years.
Oh no, people got hurt. There are scars. Are scars. I think all of us have at least one scar.
Right.
Like a serious scar. Like we should have gone to the hospital. Like I remember. I think my worst injury was we were shooting a fight scene. It was a fight scene for one of those movies, and I was like this robot fighting this other robot dude, and he was like the bad guy, but he was like more advanced, and so he had powers that I didn't and whatnot. And so there was a scene where we were fighting, and it was pouring rain, and there were these huge puddles that would collect at the end of the block. And we decided to have this big fight scene in the water because that would look really cool. And so the shot called for this guy to like pick me up and like slam me down into this big puddle. And for some reason, we're kids and we're thinking, okay, the water's going to like break our fall.
That puddle's really going to help.
So the guy picks me up on the first take. He picks me up, and somehow the way he picked me up, my arms got caught behind my back. So when he went to throw me in the puddle, I almost hit the ground like head first. And I got my hands down just in time. And I was like, okay, that didn't look good. We had to do it again, but make sure that when you pick me up, let me get my arms out because I almost hit the ground with my face. And he was like, okay. So we roll the camera again. He picks me up, and sure enough, my arms get caught behind my back, but I don't get my hands down in time. Oh. And I went, chin first. Right. This is scar. You can still see it. Chin first into the ground. And
have you guys ever heard of pads?
Well, no, it was on my face. I'm not going to have a chin strap like a football player. I was like, an invincible robot.
So you remember you remember what?
Well, so no, I hit the ground, and as soon as I hit the ground, I remember not hearing anything. Like all the sound went away. And I'm looking at my friends, and they're all looking at me like just frozen in shock. And then I just like opened my mouth to say something, and I heard this like huge crunch. Apparently, like my jaw got like dislocated, like the bone was up there. And I opened my mouth, and I heard this huge crunch as like the bone reset.
Oh my god!
And something I could hear again, and like there was just like all this blood shooting out of my chin. My friend's like, "What are you doing?" And so I went back. I had to go back to my house. Obviously, I needed stitches, but we had another scene to shoot. So
Didn't you obviously have to go to the hospital? What do you mean to your house?
I did. I went back to my house, and I told my mother, and she was furious. She's like, this is what I'm telling you. You're going to hurt yourself. And she...
Can't you just do drugs like regular people?
That's what I'm saying, right? Look, where would I have been today?
Just go get high and sit on a couch.
No, we just didn't. We didn't. That didn't come so much later.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it was funny. Well, I what's funny is like we never really discussed, but I would do similar things. Me and my brother would write these long-ass scripts, execute 10% of them, not 90%.
Right.
get everybody involved that we could, and then eventually lose interest in that one story. So this is funny, like, and then do version 2, like before, like we had a whole movie called Easter Sunday, and we had like 100-page script, whatever.
It was a horror movie, right? Some sort of
it was about a killer bunny that gets. It was about a man who gets executed. Right, listen to this: a man who gets executed comes back as a killer bunny on Easter Sunday. So this was genius, by the way. This is
child's play, but not.
Right, whatever. He comes back as like an evil bunny, you know, and we had to do everything in camera. I did master some VHS, VHS copying, but we shot 10 minutes of the movie, and I'm like, let's do part 2.
Wait, you didn't even finish part 1?
No. I was like, all right, this is the second part of the story, and his life continues.
A trilogy.
It was a trilogy. So, no, but it made total sense when you're young. It didn't matter.
No.
Like the fact that you could just walk away and start something completely new that's a sequel to something that you didn't even finish.
Yeah. Well, you know what's interesting? I'll go back to the tapes now and I'll play them. And some points when you see the starts and stops, you'll see footage that was underneath. Like what we were recording.
That you were racing,
it was a whole other movie. Like some of the stuff we spent months shooting, and then we just, because we couldn't get like new tapes, we would just record over it. Like,
isn't that crazy?
To get that stuff back, I would love to have that stuff back now. You know,
that would never happen again. We would have hard drives and we would copy every goddamn frame, even though we'd never see it again.
I know. Believe me, my kids are going to have like a server. There's going to be a server, password protected.
My kids actually have their own websites. All right, they're
not even a Facebook.
No, but I'm saying that they're just babies, and I've decided to just get their digital life organized. They got emails. They
got work to do.
As soon as they're ready, they're like, I gotta go. No, you don't gotta register anything. You're all good. You got your Squarespace. Don't worry about it.
right, for your 4th birthday.
All right. Anyway, so moving on. That was an interesting childhood. So what happened right after you? Because I know there was a period you did go to film school, right?
Yeah, went to SVA.
So, tell us about that. What was your plan there? Were you going to become a film director? Was that like the plan going in?
No, the plan was screenwriting. To be honest, the plan was screenwriting. I spent a lot of my time, I would say, especially in high school, because we split apart. And so we weren't getting together and filming as much, but I still liked to create. I still liked to feel like I was in that mode. And so I would just like sit in my room and just write screenplays. You know, sometimes I would write a screenplay that was an original thing, or sometimes I would write something based on an idea that I had seen. So like I would see a movie and think, oh, wow, that character's really great. I'd love to do something with that character and write it. I actually wrote a script I'd say I was like 16 or 17. I wrote a script that put RoboCop, Terminator, Predator, and Aliens in one movie. Because I was like, there's such great franchises, and I found a way where like the storylines could connect in some like fictitious world, you know, you can navigate the storylines, and I would sit there and just write.
Didn't something like that happen?
Features. It did. They made Alien versus Predator, and they made RoboCop versus Terminator, the video game, but never made a movie.
I mean, you could have totally sold this to Hollywood before they even there.
Yeah, I have the script somewhere, and it's actually pretty good. I got to say, it's pretty good. I mean, it's not a masterpiece by any means, but there were some really, really cool ideas there that I'm like, wow, you know, to have thought that, and even the writing was. You know, looking back at it now, it was pretty advanced. The way I was trying to tell the story and still trying to have it be visual, and you know, even at that young age. And so, I think it felt natural to just go to school and do that.
So you went for screenwriting, and you spent most of the 4 years actually writing scripts as opposed to shooting movies. What did you do there?
I went to SVA. I was a major in screenwriting. I mean, you kind of go in as a generalist.
For those who don't know, School of Visual Arts in Manhattan. School
of Visual Arts in 23rd Street in Manhattan. I went in there, and I think you were a generalist like your first year, and your second year is when you declare a major. So they have you do a couple things. You have film production, you have other classes, but I really just enjoyed the writing aspect of it. And I think part of it was because some of us had moved away and some of us had gone to different schools, so that was a piece that I could do on my own. But once I got back into school, and now you're around a bunch of other kids who essentially did the same thing, that passion to get back on set and start shooting came back with a vengeance. And also, as part of my film production class, they also made you take a video class. And the first thing that you had to do in your video class was do a self-portrait. And so we were back out there with our cameras, you know, and we were shooting. We were just basically shooting every day. And so that started to get me just back into production again. I just really, I had forgotten how much fun it was. But to us, it was an advanced level. Like now there's a school, there's gear, there's teachers to support you. There's teachers to give you feedback, to steer you in the right direction. Right. And in addition, I mean, the biggest thing was there was editing gear. and we had tape to tape. You could record this stuff to 3/4, and you could actually sit down and finish these things.
You could finally be frame accurate.
Actually be frame accurate. I mean, as much as those machines were back in the day, but yeah,
right.
you could do that. I mean, actually,
you weren't shooting film. I thought like, I mean, you're old enough not to call you out, but that SVA was probably shooting film at that point.
Oh yeah. We were shooting film, but like I said, I had a video class as well, and even the films, you could have your films transferred to 3/4, like your One Light dailies to 3/4, and you could go into one of the offline rooms and you could cut. But I did learn the first edits that I ever made were on a Moviola. I mean, I was an upright Moviola, and I learned how to cut, on the frames and tape my shots together. And I remember, thinking, I had like a music video assignment to do. And I went and I shot this music video, and I remember thinking, I'll be able to cut this in a few hours. I must have been there 14 hours. Right. Just, with just footage everywhere. It was just it was insane. Like what that process was like, and keeping your sound in sync and having to cut filler. And I look back at it now, because we were actually the last class. The next year when I went back to SVA after I graduated, that entire room was all Final Cut systems. And at first I was like, man, I was all pissed, because I would have loved to have had that. I mean, back then the avids were like, you don't even look at them the wrong way. Like you couldn't even, they was just like no access. But looking back at it now, I think having had to do so much work to create a single cut makes you, or at least it made me, just much more aware of, or think it through much more. You don't,
right, you can't willy-nilly cut film. That's not, doesn't happen.
You can't. You have to think much more, think a few steps ahead, and be much more sure about why you're making the cut, and why you're putting it there, and what you're looking to accomplish, because it's not as easily undone. It actually requires pulling things out, and you're actually ruining your film. And
so are you one of those editor directors who wants to go back to the day of film, or you're happy when we're all in the digital age now?
No. I am perfectly happy in the digital age. I think it was a good exercise. Just like I think every kid, if you want to be a director, you want to be a cinematographer, I think you should go out there with a Bolex, wind up your camera, and shoot takes that are a minute long or this or that, and do those exercises. I think that's important, because those restrictions inherently force you to be more creative. Those restrictions sometimes actually can inspire you to get around them in unique ways. Whereas if you have everything available, then what you end up being is just being, just doing things by chance.
Yeah, I will say I was also at the end of the film era, meaning like I shot film, I owned a film camera, and it taught me, and I did shoot a lot of 16 early on when people were willing to pay for it, and then they stopped pretty fast as soon as like basically DV hit, and then it was like, forget about it, I'm not paying for 16. But that, when I was spending my own money and I was directing some projects early on, that film was expensive. I thought very carefully about what we would get.
Listen,
very carefully.
It was expensive. You had to buy it. You had to store it and take care of it.
Store it properly, right.
Transfer it.
Well, forget about that. When you store it and take care of it, and then put it into the camera properly without ruining it there, and then
without ruining it, taking it out, without flashing it, getting it to the lab, paying for it to be developed, and the other part of it too was you did not see your film until weeks later.
You had no idea if it all went like that.
You remember what that's like, shooting in school, being like, okay, do we have the coverage we need? Have we broken any rules? You had to actually hold the entire film in your mind, because it wasn't on a hard drive. You didn't have a DIT there that could show you your takes and match them up against each other. You just actually had to have all of that in your mind. The same way that a writer does. When you're writing this thing, you have to have the entire film in your mind, so you can have it be uniform. And the same way when you're on set, you have to have the whole scene and all the other scenes that you shot that you still haven't seen either. You don't even know if they're
because usually you want to process the whole thing at once at the end when you're trying to save money. You don't want to be like, here's 100 feet of film, because they charge you the total thing. You know what I mean? You can get a better deal. So
you want to roll in there with like 100 daylight schools.
Right. Or in 16, what did we have? I forgot.
Mags.
Which mags? Maybe more than 100 feet. But
400 foot.
400 foot mags, right. And I remember still sticking my head, the way I would change it, I didn't have a vehicle. I would stick my head into a bag because I needed to work really close with getting it in the sprocket correctly, because I wasn't great at it. I wasn't like super AC there, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'd be really nervous all the time. Is this gonna work? Is this gonna work?
Oh my God, the first time you turned the camera on, if you heard that crunching sound,
you're like, oh, no, I got it. Do it again.
Then you had pieces of film and emulsion inside of your, to clean it out. I mean, it was a whole process. I mean, those guys, those ACs in college that could get like the loop perfectly and download it and, you know, upload and download it each time, they were gold. It was like the most valuable position on set.
I am one of those guys that is glad that's over. I am so... Yeah. Well, I do own 2 Reds for anyone who wants to rent them, but that's always...
Shameless self-promotion.
Shameless, I know. I think we did on another episode.
The website down on the bottom of the screen. Call the number you see on your screen right now.
I mean, right now, the only thing that's flashing is red.
Mention this podcast and receive a 10% discount.
That's good. I'm gonna use that one. Okay, so what happened after film school? I know you didn't go straight into cutting for show. Well, by the way, we never discussed what you do right now. Like you cut for Showtime, you cut for Ogilvy, you're cutting for ABC. Now you're cutting for ABC. Is that right? Something like that.
Yeah, ABC. I'm freelancing over there for some.
So yes, just so everybody knows who we're talking to, which we should have said off the bat. It's someone who's actually working at network television level. Things that you're going to see and not end up in, it's not all on YouTube, right?
Right. No. Eventually, but I mean, it does. Yeah.
It eventually gets to you. Everything gets to YouTube.
Real people see the stuff. Yeah.
Yes. So this will be on television, as we know it right now. In 20 years, television will be YouTube. So it doesn't matter.
On your phone, coming soon.
Exactly. So you didn't go straight into it. So you want to go a little bit into what happened after college? What did you do? You sort of tried to start a business. I know you did other things. You want to talk about those things or no?
I think second year of college, I realized that I needed to get a trade. I started to get nervous in college because I realized I'm going to leave school in 2 years and I'm going to be a screenwriter. What does that mean? Like I can still write scripts on the side, but what is someone going to actually pay me to do? What can I get good at that I can sell that skill to someone? And that's when I realized I have to develop my on-set abilities. And I felt like coming at it from the writing side, I just thought very visually, and that's when I decided to double major in screenwriting and cinematography. And so I decided to learn everything that I could about cameras, everything that I could about lighting, because those were the things that I didn't have access to as a kid. So I'm like, I'll be able to write when I get out of school. Let me learn this gear. Let me learn this stuff. This is actually a valuable trade. So I double majored and I graduated with a cinematography degree. And when I got out of school, the easiest jobs to get were, getting on set as a grip, gaffer, swing, and you could get on maybe, and then every once in a while you'd get a DP gig. And we had worked with a really core...
Right, nobody's asking, are you a writer? You want to come work with us?
No, nobody was asking. It was like being a director. If you're a directing major, I mean... I'm sure there was 1 or 2 kids that got out of school and landed some directing gigs, but that is not something that I didn't want to bet on that, and I didn't want to struggle, and so I said I have to come out of here with a skill that's hireable, and so I learned everything I could about cameras and lighting and all that gear, and I got out of school and just would take any job that I could get that was gripping or gaffing, and the occasional cinematography gig that would come up, and I just kept doing those. And what I would do is I would work with the group of guys that we were working with in school. We all grew up together. We worked really well together. And back then the professional gear wasn't that much a step up from what we were using. Right. I mean, the lights were basically the same. Things were basically the same, and so that translated. And so we just went out as a crew. And we would get on jobs, and if one guy got on the gig, he would try to bring the rest of us on. And we would do that. We would do short films. We'd be day players on features. We would do, music videos, anything that we could do.
I've never heard a real reason to go to film school, because I didn't go, right? So I hate all film school people.
You didn't go to school in California?
Well, no, that was for, I don't want to get into it, but that was for computer science and robotics. That was completely different.
All this time, I thought you went to school like
I went to USC for graduate school in computer science robotics, and then left it after a year because I wanted to be a filmmaker.
So now, are you making your BattleBot?
I'm making I'm actually trying to build robots that will help me as grips with no attitude.
The Griptronic 2000.
The Griptronic 2000, like Bender. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So anyway, that's a whole other story. Continue.
So what were we saying? Oh yeah, so I got out of school and I started to grip and gap. But even that work, it kind of dried up. It kind of dried up. I remember getting calls. I would be on set sometimes, and I get calls from friends of mine who were editing. And they would say, "How's it going, man? I haven't spoken to you in a while." I'm like, "It's good. We're on set. It's super hot or it's freezing." And they're like, "Man, I'm sitting in this ad agency. It's like, climate control. They got all this food, getting paid, a lot of money in front of the computer, editing." And I'm just like, "Man, those guys in post seem to have it made."
those guys, they're getting pussy.
Yeah, those guys are getting. Those guys know something I don't. Because I'm out here eating Chinese food 4 days in a row. I'm drinking Diet Coke, getting sick. And these guys seem to be making money. And I actually ended up having to do things outside of the business for a while to make some money. And then at a certain point, I don't know how old I was. I might have been 20 or 21. I said to myself, okay, I'm out of school a year, 2 years, whatever it was. And I said, I'm dangerously close to being the guy that doesn't execute what he did in school. I'm getting really close to being the guy that abandons the dream and the wish from when you were a kid to make money and just keep chasing the check. And so I just cold called. I just called all my friends, called anybody that I could, called my teachers, called everyone and said, look, I'm looking to get back in the business. I'm looking to get back in the business in any capacity, whatever it is. I don't want to do this, this other stuff anymore. I want to do what I loved, what I was doing as a kid. And got a couple of calls back, got some other work, and then just a chance phone call one day from a guy that I went to college with. He happened to be shooting something. For Showtime. It was a promo for some movie that was coming out. He was like, "Hey, do you still gaff?" And I'm like, "Absolutely, yeah, of course." And he's like, "Hey, you want to do this shoot?" And so I went on the shoot. We had a great time. It was just like it was when we were in college, except we got paid. It was a proper set. It's like, man, this is so much fun, And he actually ended up hitting me up. No, I actually called him up one day. I was just randomly in the city, and I knew that he lived close by. And went out. It was like, hey, if you're in the neighborhood, I want to grab a drink. And he said, sure. We ended up going to a bar and we're just talking. And he's there, and he's like, I was like, how you been, man? He's like, oh, it's like things are going great, man. This new program came out called Final Cut Pro, and it's like now you can actually just edit on your laptop. And I'm like, that's a bold-faced lie. Like, what? He's like, no, you can. And it's like, and it's affordable because, average were like $150,000 or whatever it was. He's like, it's really great. You can just do all the things that we were trying to do when we were in school, et cetera, et cetera. And he was like, would you want to come and come work with me? We'll start a company and we can just do this. And I'm like, absolutely. And so on a handshake, just a random handshake off of a random phone call, just having a couple of beers with an old buddy, we made this agreement to start a company. And I remember we didn't talk after that for a couple of days. I went back to the company I was working for, and I started to make the arrangements to leave the company. I remember about a week later, I called him back, and I'm like, look, it's almost set. I've told everybody that I'm going to be leaving. And he was like, oh, whoa, were we serious? Like, what? And I was like, yeah, we're serious. He's like, oh, whoa, okay. And
he's like, I was fucking with you.
I got nervous for a second there. And, yeah, and then we just jumped right in. Within 2 weeks, I'd say we had set up shop in this place. We had laptops, and we just started cutting, man. How'd you
start getting the business initially? I mean, you didn't even edit it before then, right? You didn't actually on Final Cut. I'm saying you obviously edited.
No, my only experience back then was I had actually bought an Apple computer when I was in college. I took out an additional loan because I realized that I needed to have a computer, and so I was teaching myself Photoshop and whatever I could of the Adobe programs that I could get my hands on, and so I had an understanding of the basic tools and how it worked, but I'd never edited, and I remember, he had gotten a promo, or we had gotten a couple of promos that we needed to deliver, and he's like, hey, do you want to try cutting one of these? And I was like, absolutely. I sat down and I watched the movie. I actually remember it was a movie called Where the Lilies Bloom. It was some movie on a random Plex network, and I watched it and I made all my notes, and I was like, okay, I'm going to go and I'm going to cut a promo. And, I sat there and manipulated it, and I gotta just say, I mean, probably for the first year, I just could not get over how cool it was that I could actually do this.
Right.
Because editing as a kid, I cannot tell you how it was this coveted. It was like the Wizard in Wizard of Oz. Behind this curtain, it was impenetrable, and now I'm on a laptop and I'm actually moving clips around. I could not. It just blew my mind, and so I just did it as much as I could and just started cutting and learning techniques and watching I actually, what I would then do is I would actually start watching commercials. Like instead of watching, the shows, I would watch things and try to watch the commercials and break down how they cut it, or, what was that effect that they did, or what was that font. Like I actually tried to decompose the business, because that's a part that I didn't get from college. So I had to figure that out on my own. And there was no YouTube, so you would just sit down and just watch TV or whatever video was going on at the time, on the web. And I literally taught myself how to edit.
That's interesting to hear that perspective of just, oh my God, I can do this now. How many people listening will not even understand what the fuck this old man is talking about?
Well, it's just on your phone. I mean, right now you can shoot a video and you can edit it on your phone, but I mean, it was just not possible.
Oh yeah,
it was so expensive. And
first of all, I am as old as you, I'll admit. And
you look older though.
I look older. Yeah. It's the balding head, but. But basically, yeah, I remember too, I remember the VHS time, and then I remember just it was gone. That was just didn't exist. Now you had, I actually used Premiere initially. I don't know if you remember Premiere on a PC.
Yeah, Premiere was around back in the day.
I think it was before Final Cut, actually. I'm not sure, but something like that. So technically I was editing way before you.
Right, way before Premiere, 1.0?
I was at 1.0, yeah. I had the very first one, man. What are we at, CS30 right now?
CS 2015. It's not actually the year; it's the number of versions.
Right.
No, I at the time I had to learn because of the way that we needed to deliver the files. I had to actually learn Media 100. So I taught myself Media 100, and I had to learn. I was learning Final Cut and Media 100 at the same time, and then I had to learn After Effects and relearn Photoshop and see what that was all, and teach myself basic compositing and graphics, and all this stuff was unbelievably overwhelming, but it felt like superpowers. It felt like I cannot explain what that was like. I mean, I remember, I think we started on Final Cut 1.2, or 1.8 or something. It was really, really stripped down. It was just, basically a time, no audio meters, nothing. No color correction, nothing, and we would just happy to be there, man. I was just happy to be able to cut, and then I would take it, and I would actually bring in some of my own stuff and actually see, we would work with some of the material that I had created, and that was fun too.
So you were continuing shooting, or you stopped shooting? What material have you created? What do you mean?
Some of the stuff that I had around, but I also had a camera, and I would go out and shoot things that I would be able to cut on my own. Just like my own personal projects, or even if, home movies or anything that I could actually get my hands on, because it was fun, but I also realized that it's only going to make me better. It's only going to make me better at what I do. I'm going to run into some problem, and this, and every project you run into some problem, something that you've never run into before, and how you fix that becomes it goes into your bag of tricks. And I needed to just run through it. And I think that's one of the reasons why I made it a point to get as fast as possible on the computer, because I realized that, you got to run through a lot of your bad ideas to get to the good ones. You're not going to nail it on the first try. You're going to keep going back and doing it over and over. And so I tried to get as fast as possible on the computer so that I could run through as many of these bad ideas as possible to hopefully get to the best one. And part of that too was just not stopping, cutting during the day. We're working on stuff at home, and
so you did this for how many years before? I mean, how many years did you do this? And then when did you start? Because you started to move up pretty fast after that point, right? You started to move as shooting, cutting stuff for Dexter and cutting stuff for Showtime. When did that transition happen?
I mean, it kind of all happened at the same time. How that happened was we had a company for a while, and we were delivering regularly, and it was cool. But I was never actually in the office. We were a company, we were a vendor, and we were delivering for a while, and then essentially 9/11 killed everything. I mean, 9/11 just decimated the business. And the thing is, we had just started the company. We were just starting to get our legs. And then 9/11 hit and basically decimated the business. All production shut down. I don't think anybody knew what was going on at the time. And it effectively just killed the business. There was just not enough work coming in to sustain the business. And so, just when we were starting to break ground, and, we had a production and post company in 99, 2000 in Williamsburg. I mean, that's that's what we do now.
Prime real estate, baby.
99, 2000, we had a big office, and And after that happened, and it effectively just killed all of the work, we just all went freelance. Everybody just the company just split apart. We all went our separate ways, got rid of the company, took whatever gear we had, and just started to go freelance. And I would say I supported myself for almost a little over a year entirely on Craigslist and Mandy. Entirely on Craigslist and Mandy, doing that, trying to get into any network or anybody that I could to create some steady work. But I mean, I was the guy every night. I would respond to every single Craigslist post, every single Mandy. There was another website too. There was one other one where you could get this kind of work, and I would respond to every single person. The next morning, I would get up and I would lay off 20, 30 copies of my VHS reel and go to the post office and mail out 20 or 30 VHSs, get back, and then cut whatever job that I, got paid, whatever money to pay my rent for that month. I would just do that for the month, and then that night, go back on Craigslist, go back on Mandy, and I would just do this.
How did you get out of that cycle?
I got out of that cycle because I knew graphics. And it was a going away party. It was someone's going away party at Showtime, actually, and I went to that going away party, and I met someone there who actually ran the graphics department. I met someone who ran the graphics department, and just on a complete whim, just on a conversation at a bar, she was like, "Do you, I heard you do graphics?" And I was like, "Yeah, I do, do some graphics." She's like, "You should send me your work. We hire freelancers from time to time." And I was like, "Oh, that'd be great." Sent her my reel the next day. She called me up and was like, "Hey, do you wanna come in here and do some graphics for us?" I was like, absolutely. So I wound up going in there, and I remember my first job was doing an end page for a movie called Step Into Liquid. It was like some surfing movie or something. And that was it. They sat me in front of an After Effects station. I picked up a Wacom tablet for the first time. I was like, okay, you do this, and just started doing some graphics for that, and I did that for a while. I actually broke in as a graphics person. The editing background was
this is important. I mean, I haven't talked to a lot of editors. Most of them are directors and stuff, just simply directors or writers. But basically, knowing the tools of today, you're bringing up an important point. Knowing, not just being an editor, not just knowing Final Cut, not just knowing Premiere. I think me and you always have this discussion that you sort of. Even I, as a cinematographer, I can't just know that. I have to know a little bit of editing. I have to know After Effects, like you mentioned. Like it has to be part of the tool set. Otherwise, there's, you can't answer the tough questions when the producers and directors ask you those questions.
Well, yeah, and you're also not going to know how those tools are going to be used to manipulate whatever you're doing.
Right.
Like everyone's working down the chain. It's a creative process, but it's a process. When you're that guy at the end of the line, you should know what everybody else is doing.
Right.
You should know some of what they're doing. And the other thing, too, is as the computers get more powerful and as the programs get more powerful, they're adding more and more functionality. Now you don't have to go out of your editing program to do simple things like to paint something out or to rotoscope something. Some of that stuff you can do. So it's blurring. I think we are moving we're moving to a point where there'll eventually be one software that sort of does it all. Like, why have
maybe DaVinci?
Maybe it's that. Autodesk tried it with Smoke. And they tried to put a timeline in the compositing program. And
it's just too expensive.
It's too expensive, but they'll get it eventually. The computers can definitely do it. But I think at the time, ours was out of necessity. My learning that was out of necessity. I just needed to know these programs because that's what was generating the business and that's what kept me relevant. But it was also, like you said, another tool in the set. It also made you a little bit more hireable than the next guy. Though that 12 months when I was working, there was a lot of clients that really enjoyed the fact that they could hire me to do a job editorially, but then I could also take it and do the opening title sequence or do the graphics or do the color correction. And
it makes it easier for any client, whether small or big. They don't have to go to 10 different people. You can just do it.
Do the whole thing.
Yeah.
And there's times where you could have the computer actually doing more than one thing at a time. So it maximizes their money. And it also allowed me to, really put your imprint on something. Like really take something and create something with somebody else.
Like the whole thing, basically, the whole post process.
Yeah, we're going to do the entire post process. I mean, nowadays these laptops that we have are an entire post facility in your backpack.
Right.
Throw this thing in there, and so I think if you're one of those people that can use all that stuff, it just makes you more hireable. It makes you more versatile, and in reality, it's what gave me my career.
Well, there's also no reason not to anymore because it used to be, like you're talking back in the day, it was expensive. Like for a kid to get this, it was expensive.
Yeah.
I mean, forget about pirating. It's $30 a month if you don't. It's if you want to learn something, it's $30 a month or whatever it is for the CS suite. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's not like it's unaffordable for almost anybody out there who wants to learn. So I don't think there's any reason anymore, you know? And DaVinci's free.
Yeah, I mean, they're just basically giving it away. They're just giving it away because they want the user base. But look, in addition to that, I find it fun. I find it fun. I didn't get into this. If I wanted to, like, I got into this because I enjoy doing it. You know, I enjoy doing this. I'll sit around sometimes and just create some animations. Like, I've had some animations that I've wanted to build, you know, in my mind for years that I just want to do just for me. And a lot of the stuff that I see that really inspires me, the stuff that I'll see on Vimeo or YouTube, some of this work that people are doing, 90% of it is it's their personal project.
Oh, yeah.
It's a personal project that they did. You know, if you saw the Watchtower of Turkey or, you know, the Keys and Crates video, these are videos that people do just to do. They just want to do it. And I think some of the best work comes from that. And, you know, back in the day, I was so in awe with being able to finally be able to do this that I really appreciated it. And so I wanted to learn everything I could about it and actually get some of these ideas out that I've had in my head. Does this work? This doesn't work. And, you know, I'm also a bit of a, you know, a nerd in that sense. I love the tech. I love the, you know, talking the technology. And so it just seemed like a natural progression to sit down and like learn some of this stuff. And, you know, there's a certain amount of accomplishment. Musicians get this. And I know you'll get this because you're a musician. You know, you have a guitar sitting in a room or a drum set sitting in a room or any instrument, and it's just sitting there. It's like the greatest challenge ever. It can do anything. It's up to the skill of the person. And I'm constantly shocked and I'm so inspired about what some people can do. And I want to be one of those people that actually uses this technology or this machine for the most that it can do. You know, there's that part of me that wants to fully utilize it, and so. That's why I just trained myself to do it as, you know, as early and as fast as I could. And it actually is what broke me in. I mean, that's really what broke me in was just, you know, the fact that I could do After Effects and do some end pages. It got me in. And
well, every step leads to the next. So that company experience was necessary. That Craigslist Mandy experience was necessary. And then
I've been homeless.
homeless. That homelessness was necessary. And but then you got the golden ticket. So
yeah, the golden ticket. Well,
you laid the golden egg, my friend.
it came randomly. It was I forgot the name of the movie, but there was a movie that was being promoted, and the art director had designed something that required a lot of videos to be composited into the end page, and those videos that played inside needed to be edited. And so they were like, we specifically need an animator, an After Effects guy that knows how to edit so he can create those videos that take place. And I was like, well, I know how to edit. And so I did the cut on those things, and that actually came out pretty well. And then, some creative director that I'd been introduced to took notice or had heard or saw that I could edit, or word got out that I also could edit. And he decided to take a chance on me. There was a POC. There was a video that needed to be cut down that was going to then be composited into the end credits of another movie. And back then, Final Cut, it was very easy to do these things. I mean, that was one of the things that Final Cut did really well, was just give you these like really, really easy on-screen tools to just create quick composites. And I was like, I think we can do that in Final Cut. And so they decided to give me a shot. And I sat in like, you know, the first Final Cut room cutting this thing together, and it actually went together pretty fast. And I think some people started to take notice, and you know, one thing led to another gig, and it started to become, I'd do a couple of days editing and a couple of days graphics, and then eventually the editorial department was like, we're not giving them back, you know. And I never ended up doing graphics there again. It strictly became, you know, an editor, a freelance editor.
And that was at Showtime mostly, right?
Yeah, and it was what year was it? It had to be like 2001, maybe the latest 2002.
Well, since then, obviously, you did a lot of projects. So I want to get to some of those projects. Right. We're going to talk about editing projects, and we're going to talk about also directing projects, because we didn't even get to that part yet. So, all right, we need a 10-parter here, guys. Next week, we'll continue with our discussion with Carlos, and we'll go into the finer details of the actual work that he's doing currently. Don't forget, you could email us at info@photographyofdirector.com if you have any show ideas or would even want to be on the show. Please let us know.